May God bless the scripture for our further understanding. I want to tell you a couple of things about blind Bartimaeus that won't be as obvious to us as 20th century people looking back at someone who lived 2,000 years ago. First, Bartimaeus was really, really smart, setting up begging at the gates of Jericho, which was a very wealthy town. It's like he chose Greenwich Avenue in Greenwich, or maybe even the gates of Danbury Fair Mall. Second, there is a reason that Bartimaeus is out there on the street. You see, in his day, in the minds of temple priests and worshipers, Bartimaeus was banned from attending worship in the temple. Why? Because he was physically imperfect. Like the animals the priests sacrificed, which were without a blemish, people had to be visibly perfect too, even if inside they were not. Bartimaeus' blindness was seen as a sign that either he had sinned or even his parents had sinned. The priests believed that God could condemn a whole family for sin. You know, we humans are very good at passing judgment about people. You might say, pun intended, sight unseen. The people of Jericho were good at it too, ignoring that man who's there at the gate, who's smelly, whose eyes aren't normal, who's sitting on the only thing he probably owns, his cloak. Third, and very obviously, Bartimaeus is homeless. That's a much more familiar term these days to us than the word beggar. And I know these encounters with people who are begging, they're difficult. They're difficult for all of us. And whenever I roll up to stoplight, a man or a woman holds up cardboard saying, "Hungry and homeless, please help," I stop and think first. Now, some of you have told me whether you give or not in this situation, and some of you, those of you who don't, you're the ones who said, if I give the money to that person, to a homeless person, probably it will just feed their addiction. So they don't, based on their assumption about the person asking for help. It's understandable, but let's get real. It's not what Jesus would have done. What do you think a beggar, then and now, would do with a bunch of money? It's a good question, especially on this first Sunday of our Stewardship Sunday, when we all ask you to listen and think about generosity. The truth is, people who know what it's like to have nothing are often the most generous souls, because they have faith in what others can do when they listen to God. A few years back, and our home audience will appreciate this because it happened right about where they're seeing me right now. A few years ago, the First Church and I were asked to hold a funeral service for a wonderful woman who had lived on the street for a long time because of her alcoholism. But with the help of her family, who made her sobriety a condition of seeing her granddaughter on a regular basis, she became clean. Unfortunately, the years of abuse damaged her heart, and she died. But she had always been a kind soul to others, and on the day of her funeral, more than 120 people filled these pews here, including law enforcement officers, social workers, and many, many of her homeless friends. So before we started, I was sitting down over here, and I noticed a small woman in a tattered brick red coat sitting about where the camera is today, across from a large pile of food that we had collected for our food drive. It was right near Thanksgiving. And I saw her, and she looked over, and suddenly she saw the tower of food here, the collection. And she began to search through her frayed pockets over and over. And after a few minutes, she got up, walking to where the food drive was. She pulled out 4 coins. She put them on the offering, and she bowed, and she prayed, and she went back to her seat. She had contributed 32 cents, all she had to give. And she didn't know that I saw, but I'll always remember watching her give that gift. So, back to blind Bartimaeus and his story. We also know what has just happened to Jesus in this scripture scene. Right before he came to Jericho, Jesus had just raised Lazarus from the dead after 4 days in the tomb. As they say, Lazarus wasn't just merely dead, he's really and sincerely dead by this point. So as you can imagine, word of this miracle spread like wildfire among the people. Jesus was at that moment a rock star. As a colleague of mine said, in today's terms, it was like Jesus was trending on Instagram at that moment. Everyone knew that such a miracle was a sure sign of the Messiah. But Jesus was not the warrior Messiah that the citizens wanted. It was poor, sightless Bartimaeus who knew exactly who he was and called out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." The real Messiah would come from God and the house of David. Now, meanwhile, all the people on the street shushed that beggar. He was spoiling their moment with this rabbi rock star. But Bartimaeus persisted. He had nothing to lose and only this moment to seize. When Jesus, standing at a distance from the beggar, said, "Call him here," the crowd changed their tune and encouraged him to be brave and go forward. Bartimaeus was full of faith. He was sure of what he hoped for and certain of what he could not see. You know, just a few weeks ago, we listened when Jesus explained how hard it would be for a rich man to enter heaven, like a camel going through a needle. Yet here was Bartimaeus, who sprang up leaving his only worldly possession, a cloak, and who ran sightless, if you can imagine it, down this aisle, sightless towards the voice of Jesus. And when he knelt in front of his beloved Rabboni, Jesus asked him the same question he asked James and John last week, if you were here, when they felt they were entitled to the choice seats to the right and left of Jesus in heaven. And that question, "What do you want me to do for you?" Bartimaeus' answer was simple, direct, and answered that empty space in his heart. Does God really love me? Does God really see me? Lutheran pastor Henri Rondeau points out that this man's life is transformed for a reason, because he admits his need for help. He admits his need for help. It's the first and hardest step we all must take in the dark. And so often, we don't have the courage. We don't. But it's the first step in AA. Bartimaeus said, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." Immediately he regained his sight and followed him on his way. Followed him on the way. So once we're healed, delivered by Jesus as we say we are, what does it mean to follow him? Perhaps it starts when we stop making assumptions about other people based on our prejudices. Here's an interesting story, and I recommend a specific website to you that is called invisiblepeople.tv. It's a compilation of stories from homeless people and about them. So in this, there's this interesting story. A gentleman named Waka Shah, who is a multimedia influencer, wanted to do a video experiment with the homeless. So he went out and he set out to conduct the experiment by seeing what a homeless man's reaction would be to finding a wallet full of wads of cash. And he probably didn't expect to meet Jay, a generous man living homeless with his pregnant wife. Upon discovering that wallet, Jay made every effort to return it. And he ran after Waukesha, alerted him to the fact that he dropped his wallet, and Waukesha turned back and questioned Jay. He said, "Are you homeless?" And Jay responded with an affirmative nod. Moved by Jay's noble act of honesty, Waukesha offered him a cash reward. But that was only the beginning. That was only the beginning. Jay followed up his act of honesty with one of kindness and generosity when he decided to take his reward money and buy food for fellow homeless people. To the pleasant surprise of hundreds of thousands of viewers who watched this video, Jay's reasoning behind his selfless acts was simple. Giving back is what you do, he explained. Giving back is what you do. For those of us who consider ourselves saved by Jesus, this is the true act of following Jesus. And it's true whether it's $2,000 or 32 cents. When being saved by God means our vision is restored, we can finally see how our helping others, instead of judging others, is what can heal this hurting world right now. Please, keep this in mind as Stewardship Sunday comes near. Amen.
I walk by faith.